recorded at Get a Grip Studios in Toronto, Canada. Get a Grip Management production and in association with the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. Presented by the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, the National Lighting Bureau, the Illuminating Engineering Society, and of course, the International Dark Sky Association. This is Starving for Darkness. I know you're hungry, folks. I know you're starving. Starving for Darkness with Jane Slade and Michael Colligan coming up real soon. But before we get into that, it's not always and every day that you come across something magical. That's right. I'm talking about Evluma, Greg Eric. Evluma, EVLUMA.com.
Talk about a company who's committed to the darkness movement that we're pushing here with this podcast. Area Max, it's utility-grade LED luminaire designed for residential street lighting, parking lots, security lighting, and area lighting applications. What's nice about this thing is that it has Type 5, Type 3, and dark sky-friendly lens options on it. Surge protection better than anyone, 20 kV, 10 kA, and lightweight housing, easy toolless access, great fixture, replace anywhere up to a 250 watt HID with this thing. Check it out.
Whoo, the magicians down at Evluma coming in hot again with another great dark sky ready product. Go to EVLUMA.com. That's right, Greg. Evluma.com. Check them out.
Hello, listeners and darkness lovers. Welcome to another episode of Starving for Darkness. My name is Jane Slade, along here with my co-host Michael Colligan. And we are so excited to bring on our next guest, astrophotographer Ryan Andreasen. To quote you, Ryan, "My mission now is to get you to touch the sky for yourself, whether it be with a camera, a telescope, or even just your eyes. I believe that if you can touch it, you'll probably want to protect it." Ryan, welcome to our show, and we start each episode with the same request. So please tell us about a dark sky experience that made you feel wonder and awe.
Thank you so much for having me. I mean, it's really an honor. I've been watching your episodes, and it's awesome. I'm so happy that you guys are doing this. But I can tell you, it was part. You're going to kind of hear my story on how I started all this. And I kind of just fell into it from my local dark sky park because I had a street light that had been thrown up in my backyard, and the IDA, which I never have heard of, sent me over to my local dark sky park, and I learned a lot about what is going on, and it blew my mind that I was just oblivious to what was happening. And so I was invited over to a star party that the Ogden Astronomical Society was doing one night. And these guys bring their homemade telescopes, these Dobsonians that are huge. They have to bring them in trailers. And I was filming it for my Facebook page to show folks on how important this is. And it didn't really dawn on me until I watched a gal hike up this ladder. And I believe I have some images of her actually doing that. And I watched her just look. And she was looking at Saturn, and she would look into the scope and then look up, and she had a tear. And it's emotional to me too, because I watched this connection for the first time for her, and it just hit me like, this is something that we need to protect. People are losing this connection, and if I can do something about it, I'm going to do it. And I took up this mission. I wasn't a photographer or anything. And so I just started to learn about how can I get people to touch the sky like she did. If I can do that, I can gather folks to help me out, get this street light out of my bedroom window. That's all I really cared about, really. And it just, it grew just exponentially as every night that I would touch it for myself, it's this spiritual connection that just blows me away
Mm.
every single night that I put my telescope up to it. So uh, until you touch it yourself, you won't know how important this really is to us as humans.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that, and also for
Yes.
feeling that for another person and what their loss is. I I see that you grew up in Utah and you spent a lot of time outside as a kid, and I know personally from growing up in the woods what that can do for a framework, for a way of seeing the world. So I want to hear about how that framed your life and where you are right now in your career.
I think we need to look at everybody has their own experience throughout life, and it's their world. I call it like their globe that they have something that they walk around and experience life, and everybody has their own story from that. And I think the more you could put a hamster in his cage, and that's all he knows is the cage. And if you live your life that way, always in the cage, that's all you know, and that's your happiness, if you will. And to get out into nature, it really does. It opens up your eyes to this. What's next? What's beyond? That cage that you've built yourself. And so, my parents had me. We traveled a lot down in southern Utah. It's just beautiful country, and just camped in the middle of nowhere. And we really weren't into the stars. I remember my dad would always like having the full moon out when we camped, so we could see, so we could go fishing. And it makes me sad because I don't know if he really understood what possibilities if we camped on a moonless night and
Mm.
really see the stars. We did look up, but I don't think we really saw the grandeur of what was there when there was no moon. And yeah, it was maybe 5 years ago. I mean, it was 45 that I really touched it and looked, and I I I, I really regret what I missed, because I was able to look beyond that cage that I was living in, and that's what I think is really cool
Hmm.
about going outside.
You talk about an experience when you touched the Orion Nebula with your camera and your telescope, and you said, "What illuminated the back of my camera screen will never leave me." Can you talk about that experience for us?
Yeah, I have some slides. If you want to, I can switch to some slides, and I can show you. I can show you where I went with this. So let me just transition here. I can bring you down. And let
Oh.
me scroll through. It's kind of how I became. You can kind of see some. This is what I showed to some folks on how I got here. But this is my home in this light, and this is what my house used to look like. They've changed it a little bit to a half cutoff, so I'd have to say it is a little bit better. But yeah, so I let me just kind of scroll through here on how this all became. Uh, that was the night. I call it the expensive mistake. There it was. That was the I bought a telescope so we could do some outreach at some farmers markets with the state park, and I bought it just. I didn't know anything how to use it. I bought it for $25, and it was just really to be a prop. And so uh, people started to ask us, "Hey, is this? Can we look through it?" And oh, the moon was out during the day. Sure, let's see if we can get it working. We kind of fiddled with it, and Wendy, the manager at Antelope Island, didn't really know too much about it, but we did. We were managed to put it uh, the moon, and we just had people lining up, and it just really amazed us on how interest that was. And so I decided, well, let me buy a nice telescope that would track, and so I bought a Celestron SET, an 8 inch, and I had a little camera. It was a old Canon 20D, which really old digital. I think it only was like 6 megapixels, so it wasn't very big. And when I bought that telescope, I ran into one of the astronomers, and he said, "Hey, for about $10, you can buy this little adapter. You can throw your DSLR on it. And why don't you try that?" And so, I don't know if you've ever looked through a telescope at the Orion Nebula. I mean, our eyes are really poor, and you see this image kind of in black and white because we really can't see it.
Mhm.
And I screwed that thing on, put the camera on, and took this photo, and it just blew me away. The purple and the blues and what was showing up. And if you look at some pretty good photos. I mean, they'll look at this photo thinking, oh, this is, I mean, it's an average, but it's my first. This was my first touch. And
Right.
it blows me away of how it had that much of an effect on me, that first image. And I always pull it up and look at it. And I remember that experience. And that's what I think. That's why I really think it's important to have that connection. I can go in and talk to you blue, tell you're blue in the face in a city council meeting, and you won't know it until you do it yourself. You just won't,
Hmm.
and that's what I kind of discovered. So yeah,
So
that was it. That was the
what was the experience though in your head, your heart, your body that you had when you took that photograph?
I think I go back to that a hamster in a cage. It's almost somebody took the lid off, and I the moon is cool, and that's all I was really used to, and that's what most people are really just used to. The moon, maybe if they're lucky, they can recognize Jupiter or Saturn out there under a polluted sky, and it opened it up, and I then started learning that just in the controller of my telescope that I had 46,000 objects in that database. 46,000 that I could probably potentially connect my telescope, and off I went. It was just this almost Christmas day that I had just opened my eyes on, wow, this has been here this whole time, and I haven't even I had no idea about it.
Can I introduce? While you were telling your story, it reminded me of a T.S. Eliot poem. Do you mind if I just read it? If that's okay.
Absolutely.
We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Through the unknown remembered gate, when the last of earth left to discover is that which was the beginning. At the source of the longest river, the voice of the hidden waterfall, and the children in the apple tree, not known because not looked for, but heard, half heard, in the stillness between two waves of the sea. When you were saying that, I remember I was an English literature student way back when I dropped out of university, but I love poetry. And when you were telling that story, it reminded me of that. When the last of earth left to discover is that which was the beginning. And I felt like that's what you were describing. And, T.S. Eliot wrote that poem long before, anyone worried about losing the stars. But we have certainly lost it. And there's something there that people need to connect with. And over on this show, Ryan, we hear from people that are saying, you don't know what you're missing. We as a species do not know what we're missing. And now, with Jane's work and other people, we know wildlife is missing out too now. This situation is completely gone gotten by a magnitude worse because of the quest for energy efficiency. And, while the societal benefits, Jane, of energy efficiency are large, I think there is, the night sky as a resource, as Frank Torino would say, is something. How do we raise the volume of this advocacy, Ryan? I mean, it's beyond pictures. So you're describing taking pictures. Yeah, that's a beautiful picture. I've looked at the Orion Nebula through telescopes and with binoculars even. It's beautiful. You can see a lot just by wearing binoculars at night and knowing where the Orion Nebula is. But this message needs to go beyond beautiful pictures. It needs to go into people's hearts. It needs to go into their minds, and it needs to turn into action.
It does, and that's a great question, and I think it's up to us as advocates is to lead them down that road. Here is a road that you can't see, but it's there, and this is how you're going to get there. I can only lead you, but you've got to take the road yourself. I tell people, you can look at think about it. If you went to a zoo and you take a picture of a mountain lion, okay, we have mountain lions in my backyard here in Utah and in Salt Lake City. If I went to the zoo and took a picture of that mountain lion and posted on Instagram, okay, I maybe get 1, 2 likes. But if I captured that mountain lion in my backyard, it's the same animal, but I captured it in that experience, it becomes a huge viral picture because it was something that not easily touched in a way, but yet it's the experience that we need to push out there to folks, and that's why I've really latched on to these dark sky parks, and thankfully that our state park system in Utah has made a very, very big effort on becoming dark sky parks. I think we have the most in the world now, and we just certified. Gosh, I think we have almost 22 dark sky places, and most of them are dark sky parks with for state parks. And I think it's awesome, and that's where because that's how I was touched. It was that state park that brought me out and led me down that road, and that's what we need to do as advocates. And so that's why I thought, okay, these photographs, this is going to show you the road, and I will teach you how to do it. I mean, I volunteer out there and teach how to do this astrophotography. I do a deep sky class, and then this COVID really has put a hamper on that, but typically we'll have 3 or 4 per year, and they sell out so fast, and that's what's so neat about it. We'll advertise it, and I like to keep it small because I want to have that one-on-one, because it almost has to be that one-on-one with folks to lead them down that road. And so I think it's important that it's up to us. We've seen it. It's now our responsibility to lead others down the road. And when we can do that, they will make those changes. I'm certain of it, because it is so cool out there. And I just think that they've forgotten. They don't know about it, and this generation just doesn't know.
So you're saying that a random picture of a mountain lion is intangible, but a mountain lion that happened to come through my backyard is suddenly tangible, and that's your metaphor to say that right now the night sky is intangible. So if we can make it tangible, and with your work through astrophotography, by actually empowering people, that they can suddenly get the bug, because you definitely did, and then feel that immensity. That's a very
Exactly.
good point.
Yeah, exactly.
So you do a lot of advocacy in general, and you volunteer for the Utah State Park Service. I guess that's your work, teaching people how to do astrophotography. And then you also work with speaking to city officials. Is that true?
We do. So we've teamed up with at least locally in our county, and that's it. It's Davis County that we've been working with so far, which is just north of Salt Lake. And so Antelope Island State Park sits right in the dead center of the Great Salt Lake. And so, having the park system plus, our advocacy coming in and trying to explain how important astrotourism for the county is and their communities, because these folks come out. I mean, I can show you photos. We did what's called a Zoom to Moon event, and we had almost 400 or 500 people show up at an eclipse that they could have seen from their home, but they wanted to be together with us and have that. Not that we're experts, but we've seen it before, and we kind of have an idea of how to explain that, and they wanted to share it with folks. But yeah, so we try to get a citizen in a city to almost sponsor us, to bring us in, because we don't want to be that outsider and say, we really want you to do this, but we're not part of the citizens. But if we typically will have a citizen that will reach out to us and ask if we can come into a city council meeting and explain it. And they're always just excited to see what we've done, particularly when we can show them numbers on the largest visitation events have been dark sky events. And when we post about a night sky photography class, it sells out. And we don't, I mean, when I say sell out, it's free, but it fills up in a day. And then we get complaints about, hey, when are you going to have the next one? And so it really, that tourism aspect on bringing the money into those cities really opens eyes. And we've had some good successes. We've also had some not so successful meetings as well. The I guess the idea that more light equals more safe, or or
Yep.
additional safety.
Heard
Yeah,
of that
so I
idea.
think all of us in here, know that there's more to the story, but it's so
Right.
hard to have that intuitive concept to bring it over. And what we have is we have this little demo flashlight, and I should have it. It's back here behind me. But Maglite makes this little flashlight that you can take the top off and put it down, and it's a all around light. And then what we do is we build. I have it right here. Okay, so I have this Maglite, right? And if it was dark in here, I can take this top off. Uh, as I just lose it, but anyway, you're gonna see right here that if I put it in front of the camera, and it's all backwards to me, but you start seeing the glare. But we
Mm-hmm.
have this. All it is a real cup that I just put some foil over. But as you take that light out of out of your eyes, you then can see. And what I'll typically do is put uh, a character, a Disney character that I pick up, that I'll put on there and say, hey, can you see this character with that light out? No, we can't. But when I bring that shield down on top of it, all of a sudden, oh, it's Dopey from Snow White. Okay, this concept right here, this is what we need on our streets. And I tell you, this mag light and this little shield that I made is the best thing that we've ever done in a city council. It is just like an aha moment for a lot of folks. On what do you mean you're not asking us to turn out the lights? No, not at all. It's just directing them. Put them on the target. Suppose there's a 5-year-old kid at the crosswalk, and here you can't see him, but if you just put that little shield on top, you see him. How simple is that? That's safety.
So we've
And
discussed this
and
issue ad nauseum on the show. It comes up all the time. The false assumption that more light equals more safety, and that's just simply a false assumption. It's starting from the wrong
yeah,
point, and then you get into a confirmation bias, so that people only look for information that reinforces the assumption that more light equals more safety. They're simply not open to the idea that more light could equal less safety. In fact, I don't. We've
yeah,
looked for it, Jane. We're starting the journey, but I don't think it's any study has ever tried to prove that more light equals less safety. And I know there's been some discussion about traffic lights or crosswalks being improperly lit, so as to make people less clear in the crosswalk using more light. So there's different things that are starting to emerge. But I certainly think that this is another one of those cages you're talking about, Ryan.
Hmm.
People are in a cage of more light equals less safety. Okay. And,
that's correct.
if you go to police officers, well, police officers must know. No, they're all operating on the same assumption. So are the judges. So are the lawyers. So are the insurance companies. So are the people that make cameras that believe that, 5,000 Kelvin light can show better in a camera than 2,700 Kelvin light. That's simply not the case. The color rendering
Correct.
indexes of low LED color temperatures are now the same as 5,000 Kelvin. There's no difference. And they don't factor in the ideas of glare. When a police officer comes to your car at night, he shines a flashlight in your eyes, or she shines a flashlight in your eyes. What's the purpose of that? So they can see you
That's right.
and you can't see them. So light can be
Correct.
used
That's
to
right. That's
blind.
it.
As
That's a
much
felony stop. And if you take a police course, the first thing is felony stop. You light up that car and you hide behind that light. That really is. And we do bring that up, and we do bring out the police chief, and he does confirm, yeah, that is a tactic that we use. And so we have to open that up. And what's interesting is I'll challenge these folks that state this, that light equals safety, and say, okay, if that's the case, maybe would you be willing to take officers off the street? If we're going to make this safer on this end, that equals that. Maybe would you be willing to lower the budget and they don't. And I try to explain to them, if you don't feel safe to take an officer off the street because you put 20 lights out there, then your whole scientific reasoning is not making sense. Because if we make it safer, we can take law enforcement to a less of a level,
Yeah, the
because it can
union the
be the
union
same.
won't go for that.
Right. And certainly
But hang on, let
I'm
me
not
just make a.
encouraging that at all.
I think that there's areas where there could be less policing. I'm not going to get into that topic right now, but the idea that so a lot of you're still in the cage though, Ryan. So
Absolutely.
let's get out of the cage for a second. I believe, and we're looking for somebody to come and talk to us about this, that actually high Kelvin temperature uniform street lighting gives people that are out late at night the wrong signal that they should not go home. Okay. And I believe that, whenever there's unrest in the streets, so I'm not talking about peaceful protests or people gathered to make change, but where you have, unruly crowds, perhaps of any sort, if you were to change the Kelvin temperature of the lights and dim it, I bet a lot of those people would just go home. Because the idea that because the police can see you, that makes things more safe. That's the assumption. But the people can also see the police. And if you look at something like the Ryan Rittenhouse video, that guy that the shooter, that street was lit up like if it was day. Okay? So if you watch those videos of, I don't care what position you take on any of this sort of stuff, but if you just watch that video, you'll see that everybody in that video could see everybody else. Okay? And it was 11:30 or 12 at night, and the street was in total chaos. Okay?
Yeah.
And so they could see tell me for real, if it's dark outside and somebody's firing a military grade rifle, do you think anyone's going to be moving, or they're all going to be hiding? Right. Because they could
Right.
see where the shooter was, who he was, where he was standing, which direction he was pointing in. You see, this chaos may actually be created by the uniform, high Kelvin temperature, high light output streetlights. And I think that is my hypothesis. Okay, so and you're still in the bar. Let's convince the city council that it's not less safe. How about we convince the city council that maybe it's less safe to have the lights that they put in, and then we can talk about
Right.
the flicker issue, which causes epileptic seizures in people with epilepsy, and the vast majority of these streetlights that have been installed in the last 10 years flicker 60 times a second. Let's talk about light trespass and blue light at night going into people's windows, stopping them from sleeping, and the whole manner of health problems related to reducing people's sleep across the board by 5% or 2% or 1%. So I think the conversation needs to shift from light, well, it's not going to be less safe, to the lights you have put in here are unsafe for a whole bunch
Yeah.
of reasons, Ryan. And I think that that's what
You,
we're
you,
pursuing here. So,
what was so funny is, in one of our council meetings that Wendy and I had attended, we this may have been maybe our third time in there, um, to discuss, potentially how we can change this. And we had presented the American Medical Association studies and their references. So just take a look before we come in here. I want you to be armed with the information so you can ask us about it, because we need to really discuss this. And one of the city council members brought up the city engineer, because there were 4,000 Kelvin, and she was concerned about uh, color temperature and that association with the AMA. And what was so interesting is that council member says, "Is there any chance? Okay, is there any chance that we can change those to a 2,700 Kelvin?" And the engineer says, "No, not without changing the bulb." And so that right there was almost a recognition that I think they are starting to believe in the AMA study. But the city council member at that point just goes, "Oh, okay. Well, I guess it's a money issue." I, but I think we analyze that. We go back, because it gets recorded, and we go back and how can we improve our communication with these folks. And we have experts that will look at that kind of on how we did and how we can do better. But we recognize that they are, I think, at least this city that's very resistant is now starting to see the data as being the truth, and we're excited that they've recognized that color temperature is an issue. So we're just crossing our fingers that maybe in the future they'll switch to a 2700 Kelvin. And we always tell them, hey, look, don't do it because you're dark sky park out there and we're trying to save the stars. Do it because of you're a good neighbor of light trespass, and it's literally for safety. If you're really into safety, let's take it on and use science on how to do this. I mean, we've already seen the demo that a shield can allow you to see an object 10 times better than a high glare luminaire, and so it so I it really is. It is our responsibility of educated folks in this specialized area to get the word out and to go to these city councils. And that's why I tell everybody that comes to my photo class, hey, look, I'm doing this for free. You'll pay $400 or $500 to go to a nightscaper conference, but I'm going to do it for free in exchange that you write a letter to your city council person. And so that's, I feel, is my payment on if I can get you to at least contact them, because the squeaky wheel really does gets the grease. And so that's what we really need, is just more people.
Well, I think that's fantastic that you're working to hone your craft of communication on the topic. And I'm just curious because I've sat in on meetings, I've spoken with people who push back on the concept that more light is safer. And it's a frustrating feeling to know all that we do and know all that we're missing, and to try and convey that. So what were some of the tips that came forth in terms of how you communicate this problem?
Uh, well, I can tell you the first off was how I can tell you what not to do. Because first off, I mean, when that light first was in my bedroom window, I thought it was a mistake. Hey, this light is not conducive to what I think should be in residential areas, and I didn't know anything about it. But when I went down there, the answer from the engineer was, "Can you just put a blanket in your window?" And it 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 made me angry, and I think I took that personal, and which probably was a mistake, because I went down there and pounded my fist on the city's front door and said, "Get this, explicit light out of my window. It is on my property. It is That light is trespassing on my property, and you have no right being there." But
Mhm.
and all of a sudden, what they did was build a wall, and so over the years, I've had to continually try to soften that and say, "Hey, look, I am not that, butthead, citizen in there. I really am trying to help out the community." And so, uh, I think the best thing is to not insult them, because I think I did. I insulted them. What kind of an engineer would have the best thing that you can come up with is a blanket in a window? And kind of put yourself into their shoes. This is their profession. They've gone to school for this, and they're being paid as the city engineer. And here comes a citizen that may have more education in that specific area. And what's the last person want to be told that you did something wrong in your job, in your profession? And so we have to really kind of be careful about that. Also, I found that using the phrase pollution is bad. I helped out the IDA do a video for this last Dark Sky Week, Discover the Night. And I don't know if you've met Betamaya Foote with the IDA, fantastic photographer, and she's the, I think, public engagement director down there. We had to sit down and say, these are some words we cannot use. We can't use dark. We can't use pollution. And, and 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 so we had to come up with different phrases because of that. Just one word, if you say dark in a city council, they automatically just pull back and say, no, 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 we can't have our streets dark. And so we're very, very careful about how you present that. And now when we go in, I go to a city council meeting, we sit down with Wendy and I, and sometimes I have Trish Ackley, the naturalist, will come and help out too. We do a mock um, speech, and we pick it apart, we record it to make sure we're not saying those things that could be offensive and could detriment that mission. And so,
What do you think about that, Jane? I want to know
Well,
what you think about that.
I think it's fantastic to hear because I hadn't heard that pollution word could be offensive from the other side's point of view. Because from my perspective, what I've often said and I've written about it is that the term light pollution does not elicit alarm, except if you are scared of the dark, and then it's sort of offensive to call the selected illumination polluted or polluting. So it's kind of interesting because it doesn't really work as a term to advocate because it hasn't worked yet. And yet, when we've advocated with that term, it turns out, to your point, Ryan, that it's offensive to the illuminators. So I think I think now I'm just seeing this term really doesn't work for anyone. So, I mean, we do say light pollution is pollution, and I think that that's a very true point, and it's a safe place here on the show to say that. But it's a really interesting point to see that pushback. And I'll just say, because there was a really interesting that happened here in my area of the world in Boston. Um, I do a lot of advocating here, and it's, you do get that pushback on words like light pollution, dark, because people are scared of the dark. And this astrophotographer, Abdul Dramali, just took out a full page in the Boston Globe saying that he's leaving Boston to go out west because he has no access to the stars here. And I loved it. I think it's totally bold and awesome to have done that. And I'm thankful for him for leaving that message here in my community, because I don't think people know what they're missing. They only can think about what they're not getting anymore, which is this quote unquote safety.
Yeah, don't mean
yeah,
to interrupt
and
you. Hang on a second. Hang on a second. I want to comment on what I don't care about offending anyone's ego. Okay, I'm just going to tell you that straight up. And when it
but
comes
the
to
problem is
let me
they're in
finish.
charge, though.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I get that. Yeah. So, but here's the point: is that you're like the early person that had to go in before the full argument for darkness has emerged. So what I'm seeing right now in the lighting, I'm in the lighting industry. Jane is in the lighting industry. So we're coming from the lighting industry towards this, not from astrophotography, not from we're coming out of the industry. The paradigm is shifting. We've seen it since we started this in October already, and we've created a lot of momentum. The fact is, the reason why people are shooting you down because you offend them, because, oh, this is offensive to me, because I'm not going to admit I made a mistake. That's what you're
Yeah,
encountering. Okay? I'm not wrong.
yeah.
How dare you say I'm wrong? I have an engineering degree from XYZ University, MIT, and don't you know, I'm also an LC. Who the hell are you to tell me? Well, guess what? There's a lot of people that are coming on board with this, and there's acute problems, there's chronic problems, and the lighting industry is now coming around, starting to turn around. We're starting to see that. So it won't be long before they're going to be forced out of their little cages down at city halls,
I
because we're going to listen. I'm
I
committed to this movement. Jane's committed to this movement, and we're changing things in the lighting industry. We're taking people by the scruffs of their neck and pulling their heads out of the sand. Yeah, that's right. I'm saying that. We're grabbing them and pulling their heads out of the sand because the heads are stuck in the sand. And enough's enough. There's way too much of this nonsense in our society. You can't say this, you can't say that. Safety, 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 safety. You know what? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? You're completely wrong, actually. Not you, Ryan, but the people that are, saying that you can't offend my ego. That's disgusting to me, actually. But it's not time yet. I agree with you that you should be polite and you should present to them in a way. But there's a huge tidal wave coming, and I don't know if it's going to be in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years or 5 years, but it is going to smash them and completely blow them away because this issue's solvable, and people have a right to their heritage, to the night sky, which isn't that dark, actually, to be honest with you. There's another wrong word, dark sky. I don't know if it is dark. It doesn't look all that dark in your pictures. So there's my rant.
That's true.
Okay, and that's the reason. So I used to be Dark Sky Late, and I changed my name to Night Sky Science because of that dark. It really did. I had to, and I so agree to you. But this is coming from experience. Okay, these folks, and I'm gonna rat them out. It's Layton City, Utah. Okay, this is where I live. That's been the difficult one. Other neighboring cities have saw it. We've been in there, but they have this this conception of who Ryan is. I'm that guy that came in and kind of pretty much gave him the bird and told him that they're not doing their job very well, and they took that offensively. So our third time to go in there, listen to what happened. Okay, we went to the lighting manufacturer, or the lighting supplier, and we asked him, hey, look, when we go in there and ask them for this light, can you provide them with full cutoff lighting at a cheaper price than what they're paying for the lighting that they're putting in? And he made a commitment that he would make it for cheaper. Okay, so now we put the money aside. Now we have a cheaper luminaire that they can put in. And then we also went in with all that science. And believe it or not, as soon as we presented all this, they actually found out that we had made this negotiated price for a lower price. And that engineer, now I don't have proof of this, but the reason why that this happened, because I was pinned after the meeting from the engineer, and I have actually video of it. I actually pulled the video from the city cameras. And he's pointing in my face, telling me, you will never, ever get those lights. And I called our manufacturer and said, or our supplier, and said, if you deal with Ryan again, we will terminate our contract. That right there, okay, I came in there with a better deal for them. You were going to spend less for the taxpayers. And it blew us away that they still said, yeah, we're going to keep with what we're doing. And I think you're right that the wave will come, and it's unfortunate that the taxpayer is going to be funding all these lights, and then this wave comes, and they're going to have to just spend the money again to replace them. But
that's why the lighting industry should be on board with this. That's why that's the argument to the lighting industry. Okay, so like when the lighting industry says, no, there's no mistakes, nothing to see here, this kind of attitude that we've encountered. The reality is, this is the greatest lighting boom we could ever launch. Would be the dark sky, the darkness, the lighting industry starts providing natural darkness and removing light trespass for people. This is a
natural darkness movement.
This is a monster opportunity. Like, it's anybody that thinks that you're not going to be able to sell a lot of light fixtures. Yeah, like, you think about it for a second. Every street light is in play. Like, what are you talking about?
And they all need to be controlled.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm shocked that somebody hasn't really taken on this lucrative business and eaten these guys for lunch, because I tell a lot of folks that, at the IDA, hey, maybe we need to go into business ourselves and build a luminaire that just kicks butt all over the place, and that would, be proven. And because I consider us being the experts at outdoor lighting. I really do. It's not the engineering department. It's us, because I think we've taken that passion, and we're having a podcast. I mean, it isn't easy, and it takes a lot of time, that we're so committed, and that's what makes a good product, is passion. It's not just for the money, it's the passion. And that's why I've tried to encourage a lot of folks in this industry, in this group. we need to just come up with our own, because I know we could outdo any lighting engineer out there. Because we
I know a
what
couple good ones
lighting
that I couldn't
is.
outdo. But here's the thing. I think passion got you into trouble in the first place with that municipal office. I think maybe you want to turn down the passion meter a little bit when you're going into talk. But yeah, and I agree with you. We shouldn't insult people and we shouldn't swear at them, and we should maintain a cool, calm demeanor. But in terms of not using the word light pollution, light pollution, light pollution, light pollution, the most solvable real pollution problem we can possibly solve. We can do it right now, Jane. I'm using the same word over and over. Sorry, I'm just hot right now. But yes,
That's
But
fine, yeah.
I can tell you why I was so hot. Okay, it was, this is my private property. This is
hmm
what and I think your home is your most sacred place that you have. And it should be respected by your neighbors, and that includes the city should respect your home as you see fit. And lights need to be viewed as no different than a loudspeaker. If that was blaring music at midnight, okay, a lot of people would say, oh, that makes sense. And all it really is, the difference is it's messing with two different senses. That loudspeaker is a nuisance of your hearing, and that light is no different. It's a nuisance of your eyes, and you should have that right at your property line to say, I don't want to hear that light. It is a loud light, and it needs to have a curfew.
Not only
And
that though, but hang on, both of those things prevent you from sleeping properly.
yes, and that thinking that a blanket in your window is fair is a fair thing. And I always come back when they say that, because that really is a common thing. Can you buy some blackout curtains? And I switch it on them. Okay, let's talk sound. If Would it be equally okay for me to run my stereo at night, and you're my neighbor and you complain about my 10 o'clock stereo? Can I equally just say, hey, put in earplugs? No, that would never fly in any city council.
I have often related the light pollution problem to sound pollution because for some reason, sound pollution is very intuitive because you can't really tune it out. But darkness, you can pull a wool blanket over your head if you have to. If I may speak for wildlife for a second, but whales astronavigate, and they have done studies. They tagged whales, and they navigate thousands of miles. They breed at the equator, and then they navigate to either pole to actually feed on krill. And their navigation can be 5,000 miles in a single leg. And when they tagged the whales, they were actually always within 5 degrees and often within 1 degree. An extremely precise journey through turbulent open water. And the way that the scientists hypothesized that they had to be doing that was through a view of the moon and the stars, because that's how you would navigate so precisely. And my point here is to say that we are blanching the night sky, and it's not just the coastal problem. We also have boats it's so cool to trip out your boat with LED lighting now. So now we have these pockets of boating vessels that are creating light pollution everywhere. And I'll point out that they did a study, and whales have actually changed the octave of their whale song because they are trying to differentiate themselves from all of the sound of water vehicles. So we're hitting this particular species from two avenues, one with sound and the other with light. And that's just an example of how much we're really taking away this environment for wildlife. So I think your analogy with sound, which is that's a very loud light, I love that language. And I think so much of what we do here on the show is having conversations like this to find and articulate better language to get our point across. Because there's no doubt in my mind that we are so right. It's beyond question to me. And it's hard to feel this right and to hold back so that the person can still hear your message. That can be a really hard thing to do. So I love the way that you're articulating this in a way that we can finally get across to people at the city council meetings who in my experience have been some of the most contentious because they are responsible. It's not just that they have the power, they're responsible for the safety. So they have to kind of be on their high horse because they don't want to then be blamed. So it's just an interesting conversation. Yeah.
And the that's the thing is most of the constituents, right? They still have that idea that we need a street light. It's and I agree they do, but it needs to be a certain street light, and that's what I have to emphasize. Yes, you do need a street light, but it needs to be a full cutoff that lights the street only. That's it. And they're not asking the second question is how are we going to light? Yes, you need the street light, but how are we going to illuminate it? And it has to be tailored. Everyone has to be tailored. You can't just drop pins and just go, 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 go. And that's what they do. And, we put up the street light and we're good. But that's just how city works or government works. I hate to call them, but I don't think I call them lazy. And I hate to say that, but I do think you don't
I don't know if
have
that's
that.
the right word. They're not lazy. They're just bureaucrats or politicians.
Maybe so.
No, like there's a certain bureaucratic institutions. Like, so, for example, a lot of people don't. First of all, America and Canada need a giant national civics course. Okay, because I watch so many Twitter videos of people saying I'm gonna fix Baltimore by running for Congress. Okay, like Washington D.C. has nothing to do with the city of Baltimore.
Right.
Okay, like if you want to fix Baltimore, you have to run for city council in Baltimore. Okay, so like
right.
It's like we need one giant civics course to be taken for. Okay, this is how it works, and Canadians need to know that whoever the president of the United States is doesn't matter to your life at all. Actually, okay, it doesn't matter
He'll
to
never
Canadian.
touch you.
Like you, who is your local councillor? Who is your trustee for your school? Who is the local
right.
MPP? That's 90% of your life. Okay, is encapsulated in your state, municipal, and school trustees. That's what matters to your life. Like people don't know this, but anyway, bureaucratic institutions are resistant to change by their nature. That's why their institutions are built to resist change. That's the only reason they exist, is to stop from changing. So when you encounter these types of institutions, for them to switch from HPS to LED took this irrational exuberance movement within the lighting industry, okay, followed up by a consortium called the Design Lights Consortium, which approved all of these outdoor light fixtures as being environmentally friendly and of high quality, called their qualified products list. Utilities then paid about 50% of all municipal costs to have them installed. Okay? So that is what it took to make these institutions change from what they call high intensity discharge sources to LED. We need to do the same thing with the dark sky or the darkness movement. Okay? And that is, we need people in the dark sky photography world to set out the spiritual case for this as humans. And then we need the DLC to be creating and improving fixtures that are of your description of what they are. And then we need utilities to get on board and understand. And from all angles, from people like you, citizens on the street, the industry, everybody knows LEDs are better for the environment, right? That's what everybody knows that. Well, we need to know that fixtures that produce natural darkness and do not light trespass on people are better for the environment. That has to be the message that comes from all angles at these institutions. And then you will activate change. You'll see it happen like that. It will happen so fast, you won't even know what hit you. But the institutions will only do it if they're seeing all their stakeholders are on the same page, right? And once that happens, policing, different groups, we're going to do light injustice, Jane, down the road. All poorer communities being lit up like prison yards, like all these kinds of things. We need a almost unanimous position on it, and then they'll change all the streetlights like that. Watch it. I'm telling you. I'm not kidding you. Anyway,
On a positive note, I really do think the ball is rolling. I mean, here in Utah,
Mm-hmm.
we just had a dark sky license plate um, uh, uh, bill that went up onto the House. Now, it didn't pass, but when we were able to go in and put on our presentation in what's called the committee meeting, so it goes into committee before it gets introduced to the House, and so in that committee, that's where citizens can present, and we got out and I we put on a killer presentation, and we had 11-1 vote for this license plate because it was so good and how well that we have so many dark sky parks. But I think it was because when it went out to the House, it was just the legislator that we barely trained. Okay. And he's still in training with us. Didn't, I don't think, present it as well as what we really wanted him to do. And it failed. But there was, I, after they came back, there were some representatives that voted no, saw our presentation, and now regrets what their vote was. And we've had so many people asking us, "Are you going to do it again?" Yes, this time we're going to come in tenfold because now we know where we made the mistake, and so now. I really do think next year you will see a Utah license plate that says "the darkest skies in America,"
I
and
don't
it's
know why
beautiful.
you
And so
wouldn't
I
do that. It sounds like the
well,
perfect
it was
sale
really
to bring people to come to your state.
Well, it was the funding. So we found out it was going to
Hmm.
cost $100,000 to get the print material and get it going. But they said if we can get 20,000 drivers to or vehicles to get this, it would break even. And so once they saw that, oh, that's all we need is 20,000. How easy would that be? Because it really is probably the coolest looking. I mean, I had so many emails influx. Hey, we support this. We want it, and I would buy it. And so I really think you're going to see it next year, but it's that information that getting out, and that's our job, and that's why I'm really so glad that you guys are starting this thing here because it is. You're gonna I'm gonna tell you that this podcast is going to be so popular in 1 year. I really do, and so be ready because it will hit you. Okay, I'm just a citizen that was complaining about a street light, and now I get people contacting me all the time about my photos. I'm not. I don't even still don't think I am a photographer. I am just passionate about directing people down that road to you need to check this out yourself because I'm not a great photographer. I just saw it and I want to show it. And that's what I'm trying to get you to do. And I don't know how many people that I've taken down that road and they have this aha moment and they're on board. I mean, it's amazing how these things are springing up. So we are on this road, I think, and it's rolling. And so I mean that's my spill, and I could probably talk your ear off about it, but
Well, firstly, I think that the license plate idea is fantastic because if you think about it, it's a driving uh, billboard for the cause. And just to have
yep.
the ability for us, to be stopped in traffic and look, maybe I'm in Boston and I'm somebody from Utah has driven out and I'm like, wow, look at that's a dark sky plate. What is that really? And it starts to provoke this questioning and to introduce this idea and plant seeds across the psyche of everyone who has access to see the license plate. So it's an amazing actually campaign and advocacy campaign. And the other thing I want to just thank you for, Ryan, is that you have a palpable emotional response to the night sky. And you are taking people by the hand and walking them into that experience. And I mean, I can feel it right here. And I've never even physically spent any time with you. And so by sharing your emotional response, you're doing such a great job to convey the meaning of the night sky to people who have not yet seen it themselves. So I know you say that you want people to touch it themselves, but you are bringing that to them. You are a conveyor of that. And I just want to thank you for
We,
your
we
work because it is so important.
We have to. That is the only way that we're going to win this. If this is, we're in battle, and the only way we're going to win it is we have to win hearts and minds, and we have to show them. I, 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 I can show people a picture every day, but when they come out with me, they are sold. It blows their mind, and they'll email me and say, "Hey, I wrote my city council. I've never done that before," and that's what that's our duty as a citizen. No matter what you're into, you should at least write your citizen. I think once a year at least about something. Thank them what they're doing, or if you have a concern. But I think people have just lost that contact on who's really representing them, and so. But yeah, I appreciate. I think this is a fantastic way to communicate this, and I'm so proud to be on this rolling train because I think it's cool. It is just so cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on our show. We were really honored to have you. Thanks so much.
Thank you
Yes,
so
Ryan,
much.
thank you.
Yeah, it is.
You starved, now you're sated. That's right. I was Starving for Darkness with host Jane Slade and myself, co-host Michael Colligan. But before we go, we got to tell you about a little magic that we discovered in the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors. And I'm talking about Evluma coming out with a massive, awesome, crazy, magical LED dark sky ready luminaire for the outside, Greg. AEVLUMA.com, the magicians.
That's right. And in addition to what we talked about at the beginning, they have a photo control fail-safe built into the fixture.
Come on.
And that actually, that replaces the need to have to worry about a photocell down the road.
I
So
love
if your
that,
photocell
man.
burns out, it learns what it needs to do so that it continues to operate as though the photocell is still working.
That's why it's
And then
magical, brother. It's magic.
And then on top of that, they have the Connect LED that is a wireless lighting management system. Use your phone, control that thing, get fancy.
Oh man, Evluma is so hot with these products, man. I just love it. Go to evluma.com. That's evluma.com. Proud Dale member, National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors. Yeah, baby, come and get it. Bye for now.